Get out of my house. You destroyed my $1 million watch. She screamed, but the truth opened the billionaire's eyes. She looked him dead in the eyes, pointed at the little girl, and screamed words that no 3-year-old should ever hear. A $1 million watch, shattered on the floor, and one innocent child standing there, trembling, tears rolling down her tiny cheeks. The billionaire stood frozen, torn between the woman he was about to marry and a little girl who couldn't even explain what had happened. But what he didn't know, what nobody in that room knew, was that the hidden cameras had been rolling the entire time, and they caught every single second. She smiled like she owned the whole world, and maybe she thought she did. The city of Chicago had a way of making people feel small. All that gray steel, all those glass towers scraping the clouds. But if you were standing inside Elliot Kane's penthouse on the 42nd floor, you didn't feel small at all. You felt like you were on top of it. Elliot Kane was 38 years old, self-made, sharp-minded, and the kind of man who had turned a single software idea in his late 20s into a $900 million empire by the time he hit 35. He wasn't flashy about it. He drove a regular black SUV, wore simple clothes, and treated his housekeeper the same way he treated his investors. That was just who Elliot was. Grounded, honest, real. He had 2 loves in his life. His work and a woman named Vanessa. Vanessa Cole was 27, tall and polished, with a kind of beauty that stopped conversations in rooms. She had grown up in Connecticut, the daughter of a once wealthy family that had quietly lost most of its money over the years. She'd come to Chicago for grad school, met Elliot at a charity gala 3 years ago, and within 6 months she had moved into his penthouse. To the outside world they looked perfect together. Elliot believed that. He genuinely did. He'd bought her a ring, a 3-carat diamond cushion cut, just the way she'd once pointed out in a magazine without thinking he was paying attention. He'd been planning the proposal for months. He wanted everything to be right. What he didn't see, what love has a way of hiding from even the smartest people, were the small things Vanessa did when she thought no one was watching. The sharp words she used with the cleaning staff. The way her voice changed when she spoke to people she considered below her. The way she made decisions about his home as if she'd already signed her name on the deed. But Elliot didn't see any of that. He saw the woman who laughed at his jokes, who rearranged his bookshelf in a way that actually made more sense, who brought him coffee without being asked on the mornings he had early calls. He saw the woman he wanted to spend his life with. Maria Delgado had worked for Elliot for 4 years. She was 31, quiet, efficient, and deeply loyal. She came in 5 days a week, kept the penthouse running like clockwork, and never once asked for more than what she was owed. Elliot had given her 2 raises without her ever asking, because that's how he was with people who showed up and worked hard. Maria had a daughter. Her name was Sophia. Sophia was 3 years old, with big brown eyes and curly black hair that her mother braided every morning before the day started. Maria's situation had never been easy. Sophia's father had left when the baby was barely 1, and Maria had been doing everything alone ever since. Babysitters were expensive. Family was back in Texas, on rare occasions, and only when she had absolutely no other option. Maria would bring Sophia to work with her. She always asked permission first. Elliot always said yes without hesitation. "She's not a problem," he'd told Maria more than once. "She's a kid. Let her come." Sophia was shy the first few times. She'd sit in the corner of the kitchen with her little backpack full of crayons and a juice box, drawing pictures while her mother worked. She barely made a sound. But children warm up. They always do. By her 4th or 5th visit, Sophia had started toddling around the living room, curious about everything. The soft rugs, the big windows, the way sunlight made patterns on the marble floor. Elliot had once sat on the floor with her for 20 minutes, letting her show him a drawing she'd made. House. Son. A woman with curly hair. "That's Mama," Sophia had said seriously. Elliot had smiled in a way he didn't even notice. "That's a beautiful mama," he'd told her. Maria had watched from the kitchen doorway, and for just a moment, she'd felt like everything was going to be okay. Vanessa had never liked Sophia being in the penthouse. She'd never said it outright. Not to Elliot, not to Maria. But Maria could feel it. The tight smiles. The way Vanessa would find a reason to leave the room when Sophia was in it. The pointed comments like, "Don't you have someone who can watch her?" delivered with a sweet voice that made them almost sound like concern. Maria always found a way to manage. She'd keep Sophia in the kitchen or the laundry room when Vanessa was home. She'd make sure Sophia didn't touch anything, didn't run, didn't make noise that might draw attention. It worked. For a while it worked. Then came the Thursday morning that changed everything. Elliot had flown to New York for a 2-day investor meeting. Vanessa was home. Maria had come in to clean, and she'd had no choice but to bring Sophia, because her usual neighbor who watched the baby had a family emergency. She'd texted Elliot the night before. He'd replied immediately, "Of course, no problem at all. See you Friday." What Elliot didn't know was that Vanessa had seen that text on his tablet before he boarded the plane. And Vanessa had not been happy. The morning started quietly. Maria cleaned the guest rooms, the bathrooms, the hallway. Sophia sat at the kitchen table with her crayons, working on a new drawing. A little girl with wings, Maria noticed when she glanced over. An angel. It was around 11 when the sound came. Crash. Sharp and sudden. Like glass hitting marble. Maria's heart stopped. She ran to the living room and saw it immediately. Elliot's display case, the one where he kept his collection of luxury watches, was slightly open. And on the floor, face down, lay a watch that Maria recognized even from across the room. Patek Philippe. The one Elliot had told her, very gently but very clearly, was never to be touched. Ever. Sophia was standing 2 feet away, staring down at it, eyes wide, both little hands pressed to her cheeks. She'd touched the glass. She'd probably just been curious, the way 3-year-olds always are. The display case had swung open, the watch had slipped, and now Vanessa was standing in the doorway. And the look on her face was something Maria would never forget. Do you think Vanessa's reaction was already decided before she walked into that room? Let us know what you think in the comments below. The silence in that room lasted only 3 seconds, but it felt like a year. Vanessa didn't scream right away. That was the thing that made it worse. She walked into the living room slowly, deliberately, her eyes moving from the watch on the floor to Sophia standing there frozen, to Maria, who had gone completely pale. When Vanessa finally spoke, her voice was low and controlled. "Do you have any idea," she said, "what that watch is worth?" Maria opened her mouth. "Miss Vanessa, I'm so sorry. I'll pay for whatever." "Pay for it." Vanessa's voice cracked like ice. "That watch is worth $1 million. Do you think your salary for the next 50 years would even touch that?" Sophia had started to cry. That quiet, confused crying of a child who doesn't understand what she did wrong, only that the world has gone wrong around her. Vanessa turned and looked at the little girl. And Maria would later say, in the weeks that followed, when she was asked to describe that moment, that the expression on Vanessa's face wasn't anger. It was something colder than that. It was decision. "Get out of my house." Vanessa said it quietly at first, then louder. Then she was screaming it. "Get out! Get out of my house! She destroyed a $1 million watch, and you just let her run wild in here like she owns the place." Sophia was sobbing now, arms stretched toward her mother, legs barely holding her up. Maria scooped her daughter up fast, holding her tight, and tried to keep her voice steady. "I understand you're upset. I will talk to Mr. Kane. Mr. Kane isn't here." Vanessa stepped closer. "And when he gets back, I am going to make sure you never set foot in this building again. Either of you." The word either hit Maria somewhere deep. "Either of you. Child." She meant the child too. Maria left. She had to. She couldn't stand there with Sophia shaking in her arms and fight a battle that wasn't hers to fight alone. She took the elevator down, walked out onto the street, sat on a bench near the building entrance, and held her daughter until the crying slowed to little hitching breaths. "It's okay, baby," Maria whispered over and over. "It's okay. Mama's got you." But inside, Maria's mind was spinning. She didn't know exactly how the watch had fallen. She hadn't seen it happen. But she knew Sophia. She knew her daughter. The careful way she moved around things, the way Maria had drilled into her from the time she could walk. We look with our eyes, not our hands. Sophia might have touched the glass of the case. She might have pressed her little fingers against it. But the watch itself, dropping from a secured display case, that didn't make sense. The cases had magnetic closures. They didn't just swing open. Meanwhile, upstairs, Vanessa was already on the phone. Her voice had changed completely. The controlled fury was gone. She was laughing softly, talking to someone, the words coming out low and easy, the way people talk when they're comfortable and certain. "It worked perfectly," Vanessa said. "She was here. The kid was here. And I finally had a reason. Was listening. I know. I needed her out, you understand. She sees too much. She notices things. Maria notices everything." Another pause. "Don't worry about the watch. It didn't break. I picked it up and put it back. I'll tell Elliot the clasp is damaged from the fall. He'll never question it." She laughed again, soft and satisfied. "By the time he gets back, she'll be fired and I'll have the security card changed. Problem solved." What Vanessa didn't know, what she had completely forgotten in that moment of careful scheming, was that 6 weeks earlier Elliot had upgraded the building's security system. New cameras, 4 of them, positioned throughout the penthouse. He'd told Maria about them. Mentioned it casually one afternoon while she was organizing the closet. Said the building management had required updated surveillance after a neighboring unit had a break-in. He'd meant to tell Vanessa. He simply hadn't gotten around to it yet. Maria got home that afternoon, put Sophia down for a nap, and sat at her kitchen table staring at her phone. She needed to call Elliot. She knew that. But she also knew what it would look like. A housekeeper calling her employer to report his fiancée. She could already hear how it sounded. She picked up the phone 3 times. She put it down 3 times. Sophia woke from her nap an hour later and padded into the kitchen in her socks, still sleepy-eyed, and climbed into Maria's lap without being asked. She pressed her small face into her mother's neck. "Mama," she said quietly, "did I do something bad?" Maria closed her eyes. "No, baby," she whispered. "You didn't do anything wrong." But her voice shook when she said it. Have you ever been in a situation where you knew the truth but felt too scared to speak up? Tell us in the comments, we really want to hear your story. And then, everything changed in a single moment. Elliot Kane landed at O'Hare on Friday evening, tired from 2 days of back-to-back meetings, carrying nothing but his carry-on and the ring box that had been sitting in his inside jacket pocket for 3 weeks now. He'd decided. Tonight was the night. He'd planned it simply. Dinner at home, candles, the song Vanessa always hummed when she didn't know he was listening. Nothing over the top. Just real. He texted Vanessa from the cab. "On my way. Can't wait to see you." Her response came back fast. "I have something important to tell you. About Maria." He frowned at the screen. He texted back. "Is everything okay?" She replied, "Just come home. I'll explain." By the time Elliot walked through the penthouse door, Vanessa had composed herself into something that looked like distress. Her eyes were slightly red, whether from crying or eye drops, Elliot would think about later. She sat curled on the couch with a blanket over her lap, and the moment she saw him, she stood. "I didn't want to tell you over the phone," she began. She told him everything. Or rather, she told him her version of everything. Sophia had gotten into the watch case. Had taken out the Patek Philippe. had dropped it on the floor. The watch might be damaged, she wasn't sure. She'd been so shaken she hadn't wanted to touch it. And Maria had been negligent, careless, she'd brought the child without really asking. And this wasn't the first time she'd noticed things going missing or moved. Elliot held up a hand. "Stop." Vanessa blinked. His voice was quiet. Not angry. Just careful. "Maria texted me Wednesday night to ask if Sophia could come in. I said yes." A flicker crossed Vanessa's face. "She should have asked me. She asked me. It's my home." He said it gently, but there was a line under the words. "And the watch, let me look at it." "Elliot, that's not the. Let me look at it." The Patek Philippe was in the case. The clasp on the case was closed. The watch appeared completely undamaged. Elliot stood looking at it for a long moment. Then he went to his office and he opened his laptop and he pulled up the security camera feed. He watched it 3 times. He watched Vanessa walk into the living room, not in response to a crash but before it. He watched her open the display case herself, carefully, and remove the watch with both hands. He watched her set it on the floor near where Sophia was sitting with her crayons, the little girl completely unaware of what was happening behind her. He watched Vanessa nudge the watch just slightly with the toe of her shoe so it lay face down. And then he watched her raise her voice. And he watched Sophia turn around, confused, and see the watch. And he watched his fiancée point at this 3-year-old child and begin to scream. Elliot sat back in his chair. His hands were shaking. Not with anger, not yet. With something that took him longer to name. A kind of grief, maybe. The grief that comes when you realize that the person you loved was never quite the person you thought. He sat in that office for 17 minutes. The camera timestamp was still running in the corner of the screen. He didn't move. Then he stood up, walked back into the living room. And when Vanessa looked up at him from the couch, she must have seen something in his face, because her expression shifted. Just slightly. "Elliot, what's wrong?" He didn't answer right away. He looked at her for a long moment, this woman he'd planned to propose to tonight, the ring still sitting in his jacket pocket, the candles he'd mentally arranged still unlit in his mind. "I pulled up the security cameras," he said. The color drained from her face so fast it was almost physical. "Vanessa." His voice was steady. Exhausted. "Why?" She tried. She actually tried. She opened her mouth and the beginning of an explanation started forming. Something about worrying, about patterns she'd noticed, about how she was only trying to protect him. "Why?" he said again. Just the one word. And the way he said it stopped her completely. Because it wasn't an accusation. It was genuine. He actually wanted to understand. And she had no answer for that. He called Maria that night. She answered on the second ring, and he could hear in her voice that she'd been dreading this call, certain it was coming with bad news. "Maria," he said. "I'm so sorry." A long silence. "Mr. Kane. I saw the cameras. I know what happened. And I am so sorry that you and Sophia had to go through that today." He heard her breath catch. And then, quietly, Maria Delgado started to cry. Not because she'd been vindicated. Not because she'd won something. But because she'd been carrying that weight all day. The fear, the shame, the sick feeling of being accused of something she hadn't done. And someone had finally told her the truth. And the truth was, it wasn't her fault. What would you do if you were in Elliot's place right now? Would you confront Vanessa? Walk away? Tell us honestly in the comments, because this next part will surprise you. She had been sitting in the dark, staring at the wall, and that was when she finally understood what she'd actually lost. Vanessa didn't leave that night. She didn't need to. Elliot didn't ask her to. Not yet. He was too careful for that, too measured. Instead, he'd said very little after his phone call with Maria. He'd moved to the guest room without explaining why. And Vanessa had sat in the master bedroom, their bedroom, listening to the quiet and feeling the walls close in. She'd miscalculated. That much was clear. What she hadn't expected was how fast it had unraveled. She'd been so certain. The watch, the scene, the tears. She'd rehearsed it in her mind a dozen times, and it had always ended with Maria gone and Elliot none the wiser. She hadn't known about the cameras. The next morning, Elliot was up before sunrise. He called his attorney first, then his building manager. Then he made one more call, one that Vanessa didn't know about until 3 days later, when the person on the other end of that call walked into their lives in a way no one could have predicted. But for now, in the quiet hours of that Saturday morning, Elliot did something he hadn't done in years. He made coffee for himself. He sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Sophia had sat with her crayons just 2 days ago, and he thought. He thought about the 3 years he'd spent with Vanessa. He tried to be fair the way he always tried to be fair. He looked for the good. He found some. She was intelligent. She was charming. In the early days, she had made him laugh more than anyone had in a long time. But he also thought about the things he'd filed away without examining. The comments she made about people who worked for them. The way her mood shifted based on who was in the room. The small cruelties she dressed up as jokes. He'd loved her. He still didn't fully understand how much of her had been real. When Vanessa came into the kitchen at 8, she was dressed and composed, and she made a play for the version of Elliot that would have forgiven her by morning. "I need to talk to you," she said. "Okay." She sat across from him. She'd clearly prepared. The words came out carefully, layered with just the right amount of vulnerability. She'd been scared of Maria for a long time, she said. She'd had a feeling something was wrong. She'd panicked. She knew it was wrong. She should have talked to him. She was sorry. She was so sorry. It was a good performance. And Elliot recognized it as a performance. Not because he was cold, but because, for the first time, he was watching with clear eyes. "Vanessa," he said when she finished. "Do you know how Sophia spent Thursday night?" Vanessa blinked. "What?" "Maria told me. Sophia kept asking her mother if she'd done something bad. A 3-year-old child asked her mother that. Because of what you did." Vanessa's composure cracked. Just at the edges. "Children are resilient. She's 3. It was the first time his voice had any edge. She didn't understand why a grown woman was screaming at her. She doesn't have the words for that yet. She just knew something terrible happened and she thought it was her fault." Silence. He reached into his jacket pocket. For just a moment, one confused, hopeful moment, Vanessa thought he was reaching for the ring. Instead, he set his key card on the table. "I need you to take some time away from here," he said. "I've arranged for your things to be sent to your sister's place in Evanston. You can take as much time as you need to figure things out." Vanessa stared at the key card. "You're ending this." "I'm pressing pause," he said, "because I think the honest answer to the question I have, which is who are you really, is going to take some time. For both of us." That same afternoon, Elliot drove to Maria's apartment. He brought flowers. Sunflowers, not roses, because roses felt like an apology and what he wanted was to say something different. He brought a card. He sat at Maria's small kitchen table, a very different table from his own, and he told her that her job was safe, her pay was being raised effective immediately, and that he was personally sorry for every moment of Thursday. Sophia was there. She sat across from him, eating a piece of toast, watching him with those big brown eyes. When he ran out of things to say, Sophia held up her toast. "You want some?" she offered. Elliot laughed. A real laugh surprised out of him. "No thank you, Sophia." She shrugged and went back to eating. Maria was watching him. "She doesn't hold grudges," she said quietly. "No," Elliot said, looking at the little girl. "She doesn't." The secondary complication came 6 days later. Elliot's attorney called with news that Elliot hadn't seen coming, though later, thinking back, he would say the signs were there if he'd been looking. Vanessa had contacted two of his former business partners. She had told them a story, a carefully constructed story, about why the engagement had ended. In her version, Elliot had been erratic, emotionally abusive, impossible to live with. She'd hinted at financial impropriety. She'd said things that were designed very precisely to do damage. One of the partners, a man Elliot had known for 9 years, had called him alarmed. Elliot had listened to all of it, only, without interrupting. And when his attorney asked how he wanted to respond, Elliot said something that surprised even the lawyer. "Don't respond yet," Elliot said. "Let me talk to someone first." Have you ever had to make a choice between protecting yourself and doing the right thing at the same time? Share your story below. You're not alone. Some truths don't just set you free, they quietly rebuild everything you thought was broken. It was a Wednesday evening, 3 weeks after the day with the watch, when Elliot did something that the people who knew him best would have called completely out of character. He went back to the one place that had never asked anything from him. Maria's kitchen table. He'd called ahead this time. She'd made coffee. Sophia was already in pajamas, doing a puzzle on the living room floor, the television murmuring low in the background. It was the most ordinary scene in the world. Small apartment, worn furniture, the smell of something warm and simple cooking on the stove. Elliot sat down and wrapped both hands around a coffee mug and realized, quietly, that he hadn't felt this calm in weeks. He told Maria about Vanessa's campaign. Not to alarm her, but because Maria deserved to know, and because Elliot had learned, slowly, that keeping things from people he trusted was its own kind of mistake. Maria listened without speaking. When he was done, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Are you going to fight it?" "I'm going to let the truth do the work," Elliot said. "I have the camera footage. I have documentation. I have 9 years of a reputation that she can't undo with a few phone calls." He paused. "The people who know me, they know me." Maria nodded slowly. "My grandmother used to say," she said, "that the truth is like water. It doesn't push, just keeps moving. And eventually it gets where it's going." Elliot looked at her for a moment. Then he said simply, "Your grandmother was right." From the living room, Sophia suddenly appeared in the doorway, puzzle piece in hand. "Mama," she said seriously, "the elephant piece is missing." Maria started to stand. "I'll look," Elliot said. Both Maria and Sophia stared at him. He shrugged. "I'm good at puzzles." He went into the living room and got on the floor, and for the next 20 minutes, he and a 3-year-old with curly hair and the patience of someone 4 times her age worked on a 30-piece elephant puzzle together. When the last piece clicked into place, Sophia looked at it for a moment, deeply satisfied, and then looked at Elliot. "Good job," she told him. "You too," he said. She picked up the whole puzzle, shook it apart, and looked at him. "Again." He laughed. He actually laughed. "Okay. Again." Later, after Sophia was asleep, after the coffee had gone cold, after the evening had stretched into something neither of them had planned, Maria stood at the door to say goodnight, and Elliot said something he hadn't intended to say. "I think I got so focused on building things," he said, "that I forgot to actually look at what I was building. The company, penthouse, even the relationship." He paused. "I kept choosing impressive over real." Maria leaned against the doorframe. "Most people do. How do you know when something's real?" She thought about that for a long moment. Then she said, "Real things don't need to perform. They just are." He stood there with that for a second. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Yeah, that's right." In the months that followed, Vanessa's carefully planted stories didn't take root the way she'd planned. Elliot's attorney sent a single, measured letter, and with it, the relevant footage and documentation. The partners who had called with concern called back with apologies. The truth, like water, had gotten where it was going. Elliot didn't pursue further action. That wasn't who he was. He did, however, do something that his team found puzzling at first. He launched a small initiative through his company, quietly, to provide backup childcare support for domestic and service employees whose situations made consistent childcare difficult. He didn't announce it publicly. He didn't issue a press release. When his operations manager asked what had inspired it, Elliot just smiled and said, "Someone reminded me what matters." And Maria, she stayed. She always had planned to stay. This was her job, and she was good at it. And Elliot had been a good employer for 4 years before any of this happened. The raise helped. The security helped. But the thing that helped most was something simpler than either of those. It was the afternoon, about 2 months after the watch incident, when Elliot came home to find Sophia sitting in the kitchen, still in her coat, carefully drawing something at the table while Maria cleaned. He looked over Sophia's shoulder. She was drawing 2 people in a puzzle. One of them was very small with curly hair. The other was tall with a big smile. Under the tall one, in uncertain preschool letters, she'd written, "Eh." Elliot stood very still for a moment. Then he sat down across from her like he always did now. "What's happening in this picture?" he asked. Sophia looked up at him with those serious brown eyes. "That's us," she said simply. "Being friends." And that was the moment. Not the cameras, not the confrontation, not the letter from the attorney. That something in Elliot Kane finally settled into place. He had built $900 million from a single idea. He had negotiated with some of the toughest people in business. He had survived market crashes and partnership failures and the particular loneliness of being very successful and not entirely sure what it was for. And it had taken a 3-year-old with a box of crayons to show him what he'd actually been missing. Real things don't need to perform. They just are. The truth, he understood now, wasn't just about what the cameras had caught. The truth was bigger than that. It was about what you chose to see when you finally opened your eyes. The people who had been real all along, standing quietly in rooms you hadn't been paying attention to. To everyone watching this, if there is someone in your life who has always shown up quietly, consistently, honestly, someone who never needed to perform to prove their worth, look at them today. Really look. The most valuable things in your life are rarely the loudest. Thank you for spending this time with us. This story moved us, and we hope it moved you too. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button. It takes 1 second and it truly means everything to us. We share stories like this every single week. Real, emotional, human stories that will make you feel something and remind you to believe in people again. Subscribe so you never miss one. Now tell us in the comments, what part of this story hit you the hardest? Was it Sophia asking her mama if she'd done something bad? Was it Elliot on the floor doing the puzzle? We read every single comment, every one. And please, share this video with someone who needs to hear it today. Someone who's been treated unfairly, or someone who just needs a reminder that the truth always finds its way. Until next time, take care of each other. Yellow heart.